Moving on to the last and final region, and then my final four picks. In the Midwest, Illinois is the 1 seed. I do have them beating Drexel. I wanted to say congratulations to Drexel on making the NCAA tournament for the first time in a while, winning the CAA. So, yeah, I think Illinois is playing really good basketball right now. They'll have plenty to get past the number 16 seeded Drexel Dragons. Now, the 8-9 game in this region, Loyola Chicago taking on Georgia Tech. This is, in my opinion, could be the most intriguing first-round game in not only this region, but in the whole tournament. Out of all of the first-round games, this could be the one that I am looking forward to the most. And with that being said, I'm actually going to take Georgia Tech to win this game. And I totally understand why most people are taking Loyola Chicago. Porter Moser is a great NCAA tournament coach. He has history of winning in the tournament, even with some guys that are still on the roster like Cam Krutwig and Lucas Williamson. And those two guys are both phenomenal players. But I was really impressed watching Georgia Tech in the ACC Championship, and I told you on this podcast last week that I had Georgia Tech losing in the ACC Championship game final, and they won it all. They even did better than I expected them to, and when all of America is going against them for the most part in this one, I'm going to ride Josh Pastner and the Yellow Jackets. I think Jose Alvarado is a special player, one of the best defenders in the country, just an absolute dog. I think Moses Wright and Gabe DeVoe could make shots, and I think Jordan Usher is a guy that just keeps on getting better and better and just keeps on making even more of an impact the more he's on the floor. So I am going to take Georgia Tech to get the win over Loyola Chicago, move on to take on Illinois. I like Tennessee, the number 5 seed, to beat the 12 seed Oregon State Beavers. And I'll say this, I think Oregon State and Coach Tinkle deserves a lot of credit. I was someone that understood Oregon State is one of the tougher jobs in college basketball. It is hard to recruit kids to go up to Corvallis, Oregon, and get them to buy in and play. But at the same time, I'm going to give the Beavers credit because when everyone was betting against them, they won 3 games in 3 days in that Pac-12 tournament. And it's funny because I don't even think that most people expected Oregon State to even win their first game against UCLA. And if you remember, the Bruins easily could have ended that game late. Instead, they hold on. Oregon State does, and they end up beating Oregon, playing stifling defense. I've been so impressed with the kid Alatishe, one of the more underrated shot blockers and rebounders in the country. But with that being said, for some reason, I just can't quit this Tennessee team. I know that there have just been many points during the season where I've watched these guys and just flat out said, okay, these guys aren't good at basketball, which is that's not ideal when you want to move on in the NCAA tournament. But at the same time, Tennessee is experienced, and they still have a really good defense, and maybe they'll start making shots one day. I like Vescovi. I like the 2 freshmen they got, Springer and Johnson. I think if they want to go far in this tournament, those might be the 2 guys they really may have to rely on most. But at the same time, even though the Tennessee Volunteers absolutely do have some valid concerns right now, I'm going to take them over Oregon State. I will then take Oklahoma State over Liberty. However, I think this is going to be a really close game. I think if Liberty and Coach Richie McKay could just do literally whatever they could to at least contain Cade Cunningham, I think Liberty is a good enough offensive team where they may have a shot to win this game late. But at the same time, the way Mike Boynton and his squad have been playing as of late, I just don't feel comfortable picking against them. I did it against Baylor, and I still could not believe just how impressive Oklahoma State not only was in that game, but really how impressive they've been the whole season. The fact that they're even here in the NCAA tournament when before the season started, we really thought that it was a realistic possibility that Oklahoma State may not be eligible to play in March Madness, and we all know just how good and how special of a player that Cade Cunningham is. That would have sucked, but thankfully it looks like the NCAA has gotten their thoughts together, and it looks like Oklahoma State's going to play. I do like the Cowboys to move on against Liberty. I do think it's going to be a closer game than expected. The 6-11 in this game, San Diego State, they will be taking on Syracuse. And look, I totally understand the reason why everyone is picking Syracuse to win this game. The 2-3 zone, given Jim Boeheim and his past success in the NCAA tournament, especially as a double-digit seed, the last 2 years, the last 2 times Syracuse has been a double-digit seed in the NCAA tournament. They have gone on big runs to the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago when they beat that Michigan State team, and then when they made it all the way to the Final Four in 2016. But at the same time, Syracuse became an NCAA tournament team very quickly. For all of but 2 weeks of the season, I thought Syracuse was going to be on the outs, but I'll give them credit. They looked like a tournament team in the ACC tournament in the win against NC State and in the win against, or in the close loss against Virginia. But at the same time, I think San Diego State is one of the 10 to 12 best teams in all of college basketball. I think they're that good. And people forget, this team was about to be a 1 seed in last year's NCAA tournament. They were very close to going undefeated until they lost that last game of the Mountain West tournament to Utah State. And I believe in these Aztecs. I know that Malachi Flynn is no longer there, but Matt Mitchell is a guy that could make shots. I like him a lot. Jordan Shackle, one of the best shooters in the country. They have some young players starting to come on. They have experienced guys like Nathan Mensah that I think could help a team like San Diego State contain the athletes of Syracuse. Maybe he could do some damage in that zone. I like the Aztecs to move on against Syracuse. I will then take West Virginia to beat Morehead State in the 3-14 game. But I'll say this, I think Morehead State is the one upset that not many people are talking about. And of course, I understand why. West Virginia, Bob Huggins, given the history he has of coaching really successful teams, and Morehead State, they were not supposed to win their conference tournament. But at the same time, what I will say is this. I know for a fact that Belmont is a really good basketball team. And Morehead State not only won, that game wasn't even close. Belmont was about to be a very trendy 11 or 12 seed that everyone was going to pick to win at least one game in the first round, but Morehead State ends up getting the job done. And I think they're going to be competitive in this game. I think West Virginia wins, but it's going to be really close. Keep an eye on that, and don't be shocked if Morehead State beats West Virginia. Moving on to the next one, we have 7-seeded Clemson and 10-seeded Rutgers, and it's funny because I was someone that has been on the Clemson bandwagon since the beginning of the season. I watched them early on against Purdue, early on against Mississippi State, dominate those two teams. But unfortunately for Clemson, to me, it's just looked like those two games and the beginning of the season was their ceiling. And I don't trust this team right now. They're not playing good basketball. Let's just tell it like it is. And it's not like Rutgers has been playing great basketball either. But I am going to take Rutgers in this game because I think they're going to be the team that wants it more. They're the team that should have been playing last year in their first NCAA tournament in a while, and unfortunately it didn't happen, we all know, due to the circumstances. I'm going to take Rutgers to be the only 10 seed in March Madness to get a win this season and beat out Clemson. The ACC is just very to me. I don't have them having a great performance in March, and I think Rutgers is the tougher team. Give me the Scarlet Knights and Coach Pike. I'll then take Houston over Cleveland State. I think Coach Gates has done a phenomenal job. Don't see Cleveland State being that much of a threat to the Cougs. I'm a big fan of Houston. I like Illinois over Georgia Tech. I think it's going to be a really close game, but Illinois is just playing too good right now. I think they are ultimately the reason why Team Pastner comes to an end. But look, I think Josh Pastner has done a really good job at Georgia Tech. I just think Illinois is going to be a little too much. I'll take Tennessee to pull a mild upset against Oklahoma State. And I know this pick goes against everything I've been saying over the last week. Oklahoma State is one of the most underrated teams in all of college basketball, which they are. I don't think the committee did them any favors by seeding them as a 4 seed. I think they should have been a 3 seed, to be honest. I know Tennessee can score. I get it. But at the same time, I think their defense has enough to at least contain Cade Cunningham. I think their offense is at least experienced enough with the freshmen. I'm going to take Tennessee to beat Oklahoma State. Maybe I regret it. We'll see what happens. I like another upset here. Give me San Diego State to beat West Virginia. I like the Aztecs to go to the Sweet 16. Once again, I just think they're tougher. Watch West Virginia. As great of a job as Bob Huggins has done coaching this team, yet they don't play defense, which is a big problem. I think the Aztecs are the tougher team. I like them to move on. And then I'll take Houston over Rutgers. I think Houston is one of the most underrated teams in all of college basketball right now. I think they're definitely a team people are sleeping on. I love everything Coach Sampson and them have been doing. I like Illinois to beat Tennessee as much as I love the Vols. Once again, Illini just playing too hot right now. I like Illinois to the Elite Eight. And then I think this is also where San Diego State's run comes to an end. I like Houston to beat the Aztecs. Tough matchup for San Diego State there. I just think they're the tougher team, which would mean the Elite Eight game of 1 seed Illinois versus 2 seed Houston. And I'm going to go with the upset here. I like Houston and Kelvin Sampson playing in Indiana to get to the Final Four. And I know it's crazy. Illinois right now looks like they could be one of the hottest teams in college basketball. They could easily win it all. But I don't think people are giving Houston enough credit. And I think they match up with Illinois well. This team is tough. This team is deep. They have many bodies. And usually people think of Houston as a scrappy team. Their offense is pretty good this year. Watch out. So I have Houston coming out of this region. And yeah, stay tuned for my interview with Aaron. But I'll give my Final Four picks real quick right now. I like Gonzaga to beat Texas in the first Final Four game. Gonzaga is just too good for Texas. I don't know if their offense is going to be able to catch up, so I'll take the Zags to go to the national championship. I'll take Baylor to beat Houston in this all-Texas Final Four game. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. Baylor just squeaks it out, and the two teams in college basketball that we've been saying all year are the two best. Baylor, Gonzaga. I got Baylor beating the Zags and winning the national championship. Scott Drew will complete the biggest turnaround in the history of pro sports, or in the history of sports overall. And I'll say this as well. People are not really picking Baylor to win the national championship right now, and I'm surprised. And I know there are a lot of people saying, oh, Baylor hasn't been the same team since the COVID pause, and I get that. But at the same time, it's not like they've done nothing. They beat West Virginia on the road. They beat a very, very solid Kansas team earlier in the season as well. And when you look at some of the other games in the Big 12, they beat a very good 4 seed in Oklahoma State before the Big 12 tournament. And oh yeah, they also beat a 6 seed that came out of the Big 12 as well in Texas Tech during the last week of the season. I trust this Baylor team. I think people are bailing on them too early. They are my national champions.